has released their fourth Descendants movie called Descendants: The Rise of Reg. We got a movie, we got a novel, we got dolls, we got conspiracy theories. At this point, I've made 3 videos about the Descendants franchise. I find it fascinating. So obviously, I have been very excited for this movie, and I have many thoughts. Let me briefly give some context. Descendants is a series of Disney Channel original movies. The original trilogy of movies aired between 2015 and 2019. They are musicals about the children of Disney characters. I would describe the premise as like Once Upon a Time meets High School Musical. The Descendants franchise was very successful, but by 2019, when the 3rd movie aired, the series was very much winding down. Part of that was because it had kind of run its course. Disney Channel original movies didn't go beyond 3 movies in a series. That's just kind of how long kids' franchises like this last. Kids grow out of things very quickly. A lot of kids who had watched that first movie in 2015 had sort of moved on by 2019. Descendants had reached a natural ending. Another factor was that one of the main actors, Cameron Boyce, tragically passed away in 2019. And understandably, a lot of the actors did not want to continue making Descendants without him. But Descendants is a very popular and lucrative franchise, and Disney wanted to continue it. So Disney decided to make a Descendants spin-off with a new cast, which is Descendants: The Rise of Red. It takes place in the world of Descendants, but is following new characters and a new story. That way it's sort of separated from the original trilogy. That's why it's not called Descendants 4, it's Rise of Red. It's not a direct sequel, it's almost a reboot. Many people are very unhappy that there's another Descendants movie. I think a lot of people think it's disrespectful to continue the series after the death of Cameron Boyce, and I get that. I guess my best comparison is that Carrie Fisher passed away, but they're still making Star Wars. It's not a perfect comparison, but sometimes actors pass away and the projects they were a part of continue. His family on social media seems very okay with how Descendants is handling it, so I don't feel like Rise of Red is being disrespectful. I do understand the feeling that Descendants has some grief attached to it now. Like watching the original movies, I have some sad, complicated feelings seeing Cameron Boyce on screen. But for me, Rise of Red feels so divorced from the original trilogy that I didn't really feel that. That's just me. I get if you feel differently. Meanwhile, some people just seem upset that this movie is different from the original. There was a period of time where every post on Descendants social media had top comments like, "They should have never continued Descendants. This looks bad. They can't compare to the original cast. It won't be the same as the original." And my personal favorite, who are these people? I think what's happening here is people who grew up with Descendants are now like teenagers and young adults. If you were 9 when the first movie came out, you are now 18. These people are experiencing, maybe for the first time, something they grew up with being changed for a new audience. The experience of not being the target audience anymore. I do love when people comment on children's media like, "I don't know who these people are." That's because you're not watching children's media anymore. Why would you know who these Disney Channel actors are? I just wanted to address that because it feels like that's so much of the conversation around this movie. It's different. Yeah, it's a spin-off almost 10 years after the original. Obviously, it is different. The real question is it good? Well, let's get into the movie. Also, spoilers, obviously. And I might reference the original movies, so if you need a refresher, I conveniently have other videos you can watch. We start out with voiceover from Uma. She says that Auradon and the Isle of the Lost were created 30 years ago, which means it's 10 years after the first movie. Mal, Ben, Jay, and Evie are sailing off, forming alliances with distant lands. And they left Uma in charge while they were gone. That makes it sound as though she's temporarily ruling. No. She's going to be the new principal of Auradon Prep. And Fairy Godmother is leaving to be the new president of Auradon University. Gonna be honest, I didn't think that's where Uma's life path was headed. If anything, I think she'd be the one sailing off to far off lands. But she's the actress we could get to come back, so she has to be here for some reason. Uma says that she wants to invite students from all of the kingdoms to attend Auradon Prep, even Wonderland. Apparently, the Queen of Hearts is a tyrant, and Wonderland and Auradon have been in conflict for decades. Auradon is structured like the United States, in that it's a bunch of states under a federal government. Each of the Disney kingdoms is a state with its own ruler. So, for example, Cinderellasburg is a kingdom ruled by Cinderella and Charming. Then all of these different kingdoms are under the umbrella of Auradon, which was ruled by the Beast, but is now ruled by Ben and Mal. So, 30 years ago, the Beast asked all of the kingdoms to join his new federation called Auradon, and I guess all of them said yes, except for the Queen of Hearts, who said no, and raised an army to maintain Wonderland's freedom. In retaliation, Auradon blocked off the rabbit hole to close off Wonderland from the rest of the world. As with all of the world building in these movies, I think this makes Auradon look bad. I think it's meant to make the Queen of Hearts look unreasonable. Like, why wouldn't she want to join Auradon? Why would she raise an army? That seems kind of aggressive. We learn in this movie and in the prequel novel that the Queen of Hearts is like a violent dictator. So obviously she's a bad person. But I think not wanting to join Auradon is perfectly acceptable. This is gonna make me sound ridiculous, but this makes Auradon feel sort of colonialist to me. Like, the first thing I thought of was the annexation of Hawaii. Hawaii was an independent kingdom recognized around the world, and they had a diplomatic relationship with the United States. But then in 1893, US troops invaded and Hawaii was forced to surrender. And Hawaii was then annexed in 1898 and made into a United States territory. Annexation means acquiring territory illegally and through force. Very abridged history lesson, and obviously not a one-to-one correlation to Wonderland and Auradon. We only know that Wonderland raised an army to defend themselves. We don't know what actions Auradon took, or if they were trying to acquire Wonderland by force. I will say that in the prequel novel, this conflict is referred to as the War of the Roses, which to me implies that both Wonderland and Auradon were active participants in an armed conflict. I feel like it's totally cool if Wonderland didn't want to become Auradon territory and defended their independence. I think I'm supposed to think that the Queen of Hearts was unreasonable for this, but unfortunately for Disney, I'm already biased against Auradon because of that time they made a multi-generational prison island. So I don't trust Auradon in general. People sometimes tell me that I overthink children's media, but I think if you put an armed conflict and the acquisition of territory in your children's media, then I'm allowed to overthink it. All right? Realistically, I think the reason that this is the backstory for Wonderland is more for plot setup. I think Disney wanted a new villain, but in theory, all of the villains were on the Isle of the Lost, and they're all chill now. If the Queen of Hearts had been on the Isle and is now loose and being evil, then that kind of undermines the third Descendants movie where we took down the Isle barrier because everyone deserves a second chance. Like, maybe it was a bad idea to release all these villains if one of them is out being evil. So instead, the Queen of Hearts was never on the Isle. She's been separate this whole time. Auradon locked up the rabbit hole, so everyone in Wonderland has been totally isolated for 30 years. They've been completely divorced from the story of the first 3 movies. And now we can have Wonderland as a cool new location. So I think it serves as a reset. Back to Uma. She wants to bring the daughter of the Queen of Hearts to Auradon Prep. Fairy Godmother is very alarmed by this idea. But Uma's in charge now, so I guess we're doing it. She also says it's what Carlos would have wanted, and this is our tribute to Cameron Boyce. Which, I don't know if I'm a heartless, nitpicky shrew, but I didn't love this. I get doing a tribute to him, that's fine, and I understand the limitations, because Uma and Fairy Godmother are the only 2 characters in this movie who knew Carlos, and because they're only really in this scene, we have to do the tribute now. So Uma is coming to be the principal, and she has brought along some of her pirates to redecorate the office. These pirates are comically adult looking, which was also the case in the second movie when we met the pirate crew. Whenever Descendants needs pirates, they get the most middle-aged looking people they possibly can. And the pirates are bringing in a pirate flag and a bunch of framed photos to redecorate the office with. There's a photo of the core four and Ben in movie 3, Uma and Evie in movie 3, Ben and Mal from movie 1, and Carlos from movie 1. And when Uma says, "It's what Carlos would have wanted," we're like cutting between Uma crying and this photo of Carlos we just hung on the wall. It took me so out of it because I was imagining the production conversation where they decided how to visually handle this. Like, they wanted something to show of Carlos in case we somehow forgot what he looked like. But they decided that showing, like, a black and white flashback of him from the previous movies would be cheesy, which it would have been. So, good for them. But they decided on a framed photo, which what is this photo supposed to be within the world of Descendants? This is the outfit he was wearing when the Core 4 first arrived in Auradon. Is it like a school ID photo? Were the Life Touch people in the school auditorium? And then even though Fairy Godmother also knew and liked these characters, the photo couldn't have just already been in her office, no. Uma took these photos of her friends to the Michaels framing department and then had her pirate lackeys bring them to her new office. And I don't know the pirate dynamic. Like, are these pirates her employees? Are they getting minimum wage for helping her move into this office? Or are they her friends and they're all just conveniently free on this, like, I don't know, Tuesday afternoon when Uma and Fairy Godmother are having this meeting? And now Uma is going to say her 3 lines about Carlos while we cut between her and this framed headshot of Carlos from movie 1. Also, I can't articulate it, but I think it's weird that we didn't use a photo of him from the 3rd movie. Like, intentionally using a photo from when he was several years younger. My only guess is that the first movie is the most iconic, so they wanted to use an image of him from that. But I don't know, when I think of Cameron Boyce, I think of him at the age he was when he passed away. I feel like they could have used a picture of him from the 3rd movie. Maybe one that felt a little more candid. I saw people on social media talking about how this was such a touching tribute, and I was like, maybe I'm just a bitch. maybe that's the problem. Anyways, so Uma sends a letter to Wonderland, inviting the Queen of Hearts' daughter to Auradon Prep. Then we cut to Wonderland and get a musical number introducing the Queen of Hearts' daughter, who's named Red. Descendants has always done this thing where the kids are named after the parents, but I feel like Red is maybe a new low. Wonderland is a strict dictatorship enforced by a military. The Queen of Hearts beheads people, and the citizens are under a curfew. There's more stuff about this in the prequel novel, which we'll talk about later. But Red is rebellious and sneaks out at night and does spray paint. She doesn't want her mother controlling her, and she doesn't want to become queen like her mother. The tension between Red and her mom is very personal, very Disney Channel. Like, oh my god, my mom is literally the worst. She doesn't let me do anything fun. When her mom's, like, a dictator. Like, Red, sweetheart, I feel for you, but your mom is a bigger problem than just in your life. This is a Disney Channel movie, so it makes sense that we aren't really focusing on the tyrannical queen stuff. Obviously, for the kids watching, it's much more relatable and understandable to say the queen is a mean mom versus the queen is an unchecked ruler suppressing and enacting violence on her subjects. It's just funny to me, because every time Red complains about her mom, it sounds so incredibly lame. So Red has her musical number where she's causing trouble and being chased by the guards. And then Maddox Hatter, the son of the Mad Hatter, uses some kind of contraption to rescue Red from the guards. Maddox is her tutor. Red complains about her mom and how she isn't letting Red live her own life. What future, Mads? I literally have the most controlling mom ever. She's never gonna let me leave Wonderland. which I agree, she is very controlling. That's maybe one of the defining characteristics of a dictator. Fair. But it's weird to complain that her mom won't let her leave Wonderland. Oridon has closed off Wonderland, so no one can leave. It's not just you. Maddox is worried about Red and feels bad for her having a mother that's so particular. And he says that the Queen of Hearts is a product of her unfortunate past. Then he shows Red a time machine pocket watch that he has made. Surprise! This is a time travel movie. Did I mention that? Yeah. It takes you to the moment in time that can give you what your heart wants most. If you really want a different life, Red, I want you to have that choice. But then he decides that it's too dangerous, and he isn't going to let Red use it. But Red pickpockets the pocket watch. Pickpockets the pocket watch, and picks a peck of pickled peppers. Then we cut to our other main character, Chloe. She is the daughter of Cinderella and Charming. They are played by Brandy and Paolo, who played them in the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella back in 1997, which I have not watched, but I probably should. Executive producer Suzanne Todd has clarified that they aren't playing the version of Cinderella and Charming from the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella, and they aren't playing the version of Cinderella and Charming from the animated movie. As Todd describes it, they're actually playing a third version of Cinderella and Charming, one conceived exclusively for the Descendants franchise. They're definitely our own characters, she tells TV Line, complete with their blue-colored hair. This is something I'm gonna go back to. The characters in Descendants are different versions than the ones in the Disney animated movies. Write that down, it's gonna be on the test. So, Chloe and her dad practice sword fighting. Then Cinderella comes in, and her and Charming sing So This Is Love. And Charming says, you know, this is the first song your mom and I ever danced to back when we were in school. And Cinderella says, we fell in love at Castle Coming. Wah, Cinderella and Charming didn't fall in love at a school dance. They're different versions of the characters. We learn that Chloe is an overachiever, and Cinderella gives her some glass shoes as a reward for working so hard and being such a good person. The shoes are ugly, but that's not surprising. Then we cut back to Wonderland. The Queen of Hearts is pissed that the giant banner of her face has been vandalized. And somehow they don't know it was Red. The captain of the guards is apologizing to the Queen, like, we don't know who did it, but we're doing everything we can to find them. How do you not know who did it? You almost caught her. Even if you didn't see her face, you know it's a girl who is wearing a red leather outfit. I feel like that's a pretty big clue. So I think the guards are just genuinely incompetent. It's like how stormtroopers can't aim. Wonderland soldiers can't find a teenage girl. Then Red walks in, and the Queen of Hearts says that since Red is going to be queen one day, she gets to decide what to do with that guard. And Red is all cheeky, like, off with his hat. And the Queen of Hearts says, you know, I was the same way at your age, desperately wanting to be a queen that everyone would adore. But if I've learned anything, it's this. It's better to be feared than loved. So she makes Red try again. But before Red can say anything, Maddox interrupts with the letter from Uma. Uma invites Red to join Oridon Prep and invites her and her mom to the Welcome Day ceremony. The Queen accepts, which Red is shocked by. We cut back to Chloe. Her and her mom are getting in a carriage about to go to Oridon Prep. But Charming is going to go visit Chad at college. So that's our acknowledgement of Chad. Then we cut to Red and the Queen of Hearts. They're driving out of Wonderland. The invitation letter acts as a key that opens the closed-off rabbit hole. So they make it to Oridon, and then we get another song, this time from the Queen of Hearts. Red is like, I wish my mom loved me. And the Queen of Hearts is like, love ain't it. Love is a weakness. And the song pauses while they go sign in, and Cinderella and Chloe are there. And Cinderella and the Queen of Hearts know each other. Chloe introduces herself to Red, and Red is rude to her. We are then told, via rap, that they were classmates. Back at school, the Queen of Hearts was pranked, and she's been mean ever since. Then the Queen of Hearts gets an unexplained costume change, and then she's singing with all these backup dancers, and there's like gospel choir backup vocals. I liked that part of the song. The rest of it sounded, bad and clunky. Descendants loves to put an awkward, slow rap in a song. Then the Queen of Hearts shows Red the looking glass. The looking glass shows the future, and right now it shows them ruling side by side, which Red is upset about because she doesn't want to be an evil queen. Then the fairy godmother introduces Uma as the new principal, and then Uma and her extremely adult-looking pirates do an abridged version of What's My Name, the song from movie 2. Let me pause for a moment to talk about the pacing of this movie. The beginning of this movie is very similar to the first Descendants. We get voiceover explaining the world building. Then we see a young person in a position of authority who wants to bring over students from the scary off-limits region. The adults don't like it, but it happens anyway. Then we cut to the scary off-limits region. We get a song introducing our main villain kids. Then the main character's mom tells them about the invitation to Auradon. In the first Descendants, we then immediately go to Auradon. But in Rise of Red, we also need a scene introducing the pocket watch. And then we have Chloe, our other main character. Her and Red don't know each other and are from different places, so we need separate scenes to introduce her. So we spend much longer in this movie doing just introductions. We are almost half an hour into this movie. At this point in Descendants 1, we had already introduced the main characters, and they had gone to Auradon. They've met almost all the Auradon characters, attempted a museum heist, Maleficent sings a song about being evil, and they fail the heist. In Rise of Red, we've met the characters and had 2 songs, but the conflict of the movie hasn't started yet. We haven't even met the rest of the characters. The main plot takes place in the past, and we are still in the present. Which, this is a time travel movie, and there are some characters who stay in the present day. So we can't time travel until we've given them enough screen time. We have Brandy and Rita Ora here, so we have to give them stuff to do. We're half an hour in, and we've just had slow character introductions, 2 full-length songs, and 2 short songs. When I was watching this movie the first time, I was like, wow, this is a slow start. But the plot's about to kick in. The Queen of Hearts uses a deck of cards to summon her card soldier army. She closes off the courtyard and traps everyone. And then she says, "You're all acting like you've never seen a coup before." Which, we are at the new student orientation at a boarding school. So, not quite. The rulers of Auradon aren't even here. They're like off on a boat somewhere. I understand that a lot of royalty is in this courtyard, and she does break Fairy Godmother's wand, so like she is doing something. I just don't know if it counts as a coup. Then Cinderella tries to tell Queen of Hearts to stop. "I know what happened was hard for you, but that was ages ago. It was a stupid prank. Stupid I could forgive. Humiliating a girl at her first dance, turning me into a monster in front of everyone. Now that's just cruel. You didn't care then. You were off with your prince. Oh, but you will now." So now we kind of know what the prank was, and that Cinderella was too distracted with Charming to help her. Then Cinderella refuses to kneel to the Queen of Hearts, and so the Queen of Hearts asks Red what they should do with her. And Cinderella's like, "Your daughter knows this is wrong. She can't do it." And that makes Red want to prove her wrong, I guess. Even though Red has been very vocally against her mom and against being evil like her, even to her face. But I guess she's like, how dare Cinderella say that I can't do something evil? So Red sentences Cinderella to treason, which means she's going to be beheaded. And Cinderella is dragged away. Chloe is upset about this, obviously, and she's yelling and like fiddling with her sword. Meanwhile, Red decides to use the pocket watch. But before she uses it, she goes to stop Chloe from something. I think we're supposed to understand that Chloe was going to pull her sword out and, like, attack the Queen of Hearts, maybe. But the way the scene is blocked, she's just standing there with her hand on her sword, sort of fidgeting. So I don't know why Red felt the need to go over to her. And then Chloe and Red sort of grapple, and in doing so, activate the pocket watch. They're in the same school courtyard, but in the past. Most of this movie takes place in this courtyard. Descendants, the Rise of Courtyard. Am I right? No? Alright. In the courtyard, young fairy godmother named Faye is there practicing magic, but she's not very good at it. And she hasn't heard of Auradon. Chloe is confused and has not yet figured out that they've time traveled. And Red is like, really? I thought you were smart. Which, like, based on what? We know that Chloe volunteered with the Auradon Historical Society and got straight A's. But Red doesn't know that. They exchanged 2 sentences with each other. I noticed that with Chloe specifically, characters referencing things about her that they shouldn't know or that hasn't been communicated to us. So Red explains to Chloe that they time traveled, and she was trying to stop her mom from doing the coup. Coup, in air quotes. But Red didn't know the watch was going to take them back so far. Chloe wants to go back to the present day to save her mom. So then we get a song where they fight over the pocket watch. Over the course of the song, they decide that they have the same goal and they're going to work together to rewrite history and fix the present. This song sounds very like knockoff Paramore or like Ally and AJ, and it also has bad rapping in it. Then the girls go explore. The school is called Merlin Academy, which they say is what Auradon Prep was called before the Beast founded Auradon. The location is not the same as the Auradon Prep in the previous movies. And also, technically, in those movies, they say that the Auradon Prep Castle was converted into a school by the Beast, and it wasn't actually a school before the founding of Auradon. So, Auradon Prep was not a school in the past. It wouldn't have been Merlin Academy decades ago. But I think I'm the only person who knows that, so I guess it doesn't matter. Red and Chloe see a poster for the Castle Coming dance, and they're like, oh, that must be the dance where the Queen of Hearts was pranked. So we have to stop the prank from happening, to stop her from becoming evil. It's a little bit Back to the Future, right? Accidentally time traveling to when your parents were teenagers and saving them from a bully to change what they're like in the present day. I've never seen Back to the Future. I mean, I know stuff through like cultural osmosis. There's a DeLorean and weird time travel incest stuff. That doesn't happen in this movie. Then Chloe and Red meet Principal Merlin, who's one of my favorite parts of this movie. I love a silly, befuddled wizard. Red tells him that they are transfer students. He can't find any documentation of that, but decides it'll turn up at some point. So he takes them to the class he's teaching, which is Honors Alchemy in his office. It's in his office because we can only build so many sets, you know? I don't think these random unverified transfer students should be taken straight into an honors class, but I guess it'll be fine. He sets the girls up with lab partners, who are Bridget and Ella, the young Queen of Hearts and young Cinderella. Chloe calls Ella Mom at first, which is embarrassing. They're making some kind of potion, and Chloe finds the pods they're draining super gross, but Ella doesn't mind. And Chloe says, "You're not what I was expecting." And Ella is immediately defensive. "You've never worked with someone who's not royalty? Worried a commoner might rub off on you." Which, how does she know Chloe is royalty? Is it just what she's wearing? Are most people at this school royalty, and so that's a fair assumption to make? Meanwhile, Red is talking to Bridget. Red is shocked at how bubbly and nice she is. Bridget offers her a flamingo feather cupcake that she baked. The feathers turn things pink. "Just one, or there can be side effects." Then we get a song where Bridget sings about how it's good to be a nice person. And at this point in the movie, I was like, this is great. Whimsical magic school and pop songs and magic that turns things pink. Can't believe we had to waste so much time to get here. The movie is halfway over. We are 45 minutes into a 90-minute movie. This is probably the best musical number in the movie. The song is really fun, and it has a lot of very musical theater-y choreography, and a few guest verses from the side characters. So Faye gets a few lines. We see Jasmine and Aladdin, and they sing, "Call us Jaladin, he's like a magnet, she's so attractive, it's all fantastic, 'cause we're flying high together on a magic carpet ride." This became like a meme. I think because of the choreography and also them saying Jaladin, which ship names are not new to Descendants. In movie 3, Carlos gives Jane a 3D printed necklace that says Jarlos. I don't know. I thought the gelatin bit was silly, but I didn't know other people would find it so funny. My favorite thing to come out of it has been cast members from Rise of Red recreating this bit on TikTok. Very cute. Then Charming has a verse. Charming! That's just the name people know me by. Crowned Prince isn't the way I ride. If you want to roll together, it could be a vibe. Okay, that's my dad. Oh. The whole Merlin Academy and teenage versions of the Disney characters is one of the most controversial aspects of this movie. A lot of Disney purists are like, these characters didn't go to high school together. Which, if I could bring back that point that these are different versions of the characters. They are not the same as they were in the animated movies. Which, even in the first Descendants, all of the Disney characters coexist in this shared modern universe. And these Disney characters, even if we never saw them, we can guess that they are all roughly the same age because they have teenage children who are the same age. So to me, the jump that these Disney characters went to high school together is like not a big deal to me. They are the same age at the same time and place. Descendants is Disney characters going to high school together, the franchise. And then some people get kind of CinemaSins with it, like, Jasmine and Aladdin didn't meet in school. They met in the streets of Agrabah. As though it's like a plot hole. You guys, I promise that the writers of this Disney Descendants movie know the plot of Aladdin. This is a different universe, and we are reimagining the characters for funsies. Anyway, so we're singing this song and having fun, and Red is like, wow, Bridget, you must be friends with everyone. And Bridget is like, oh no, Ella's my only friend. Huh? I understand what they were going for. Like, Ella is her only friend, but she is friendly with and nice to everyone. But what this musical number is communicating to me is that Bridget is popular and friends with everyone. Then the villain kids come in and interrupt the song, and they take over the song, so now it's like a song battle. We meet Captain Hook, Hades and Maleficent, and Morgie, the son of Morgana Le Fay, prompting everyone to say, who? What movie is she from? She is not from a Disney movie. Morgana is Merlin's enemy. She was a character in the 2010 Nicolas Cage movie Sorcerer's Apprentice and the Disney Junior animated series Sophia the First. Not any actual Disney animated movies. Did they run out of characters to use in Descendants? I know they can't use any of their animal characters, so that's limiting. But this feels random. Then they introduce the leader of the villain kids, Uliana. Uliana is Ursula's little sister. Ursula had a sister in the direct-to-DVD Little Mermaid sequel, and in that movie she is named Morgana, just to make this all the more confusing. But the sequels to the animated movies have never been treated as canon in the Descendants universe, so disregard that. This is just a new character. Uliana, Ursula's little sister. It's interesting that they made this character Ursula's sister and not just Ursula. I'm assuming there's a reason for that, but I don't know what it is. Whatever, so then Uliana takes all of Bridget's cupcakes. After Ella, Chloe, and Red all yell at her to give the cupcakes back, Uliana returns the cupcakes but takes all the feathers. And then even though Bridget warns her not to, Uliana eats all of the feathers. And because she ate so many, the feathers turn her into part flamingo. Uliana chases after Bridget and Ella and then falls into a fountain, which washes off the magic. Uliana is extremely pissed, so Red and Chloe are like, well, we figured out who's going to do the prank. Later, they're all inside, and Ella explains to Chloe and Red that Uliana is always bullying them. Then Charming comes over, and he's like, that was so cool how you guys bested Uliana. And he brings up Castle Coming. But Ella is like, it's an outdated, elitist tradition. And Charming's like, oh, well, if you change your mind. Bridget is sad that she doesn't have plans for the Castle Coming dance. So Ella suggests they go as friends, even though she disagrees with everything Castle Coming stands for. To get more information about Uliana, Chloe and Red visit Ella at her house to ask her questions. Ella is not happy to see them, but she lets them inside if they help her with her chores. Which, why wouldn't you just tell them to stand still and not touch anything? They don't know how to do the chores, right? Or what Lady Tremaine's preferences are. Then Chloe slips on her glass shoes, which is funny because they don't look like glass, so it's the worst of both worlds. The shoes don't look like glass, but they are slippery like glass. Are they giving her horrendous blisters? If she steps on a nail, would they shatter and cut her foot? Chloe explained to Ella and Red that the shoes were a reward for volunteering and getting good grades and being a good person. And Ella was like, does it really count as being a good person if you're getting a reward for it? Which I feel like this is trying to be part of a theme or like a character arc, but that doesn't really work because that isn't a lesson that Chloe needs to learn. She's always doing the right thing and being a good person just because she wants to. Ella tells them that Bridget is brave to keep being so nice, and that Uliana can't stand that Bridget keeps trying to be friends with her. She also tells them that Uliana and the villains hang out at the Black Lagoon. Then Chloe breaks a vase, and Lady Tremaine comes down and is very upset. Chloe apologizes, but sorry doesn't buy me a new vase, now does it? And then Ella is grounded. Chloe apologizes, but Ella's like, sorry doesn't get me ungrounded. Next time, don't be such a princess. Which I don't know what that's supposed to mean. What did she do that was princessy? Was it because she apologized and expected everything to be okay after that? Because her apologizing wasn't the problem. Next time, don't be such a princess and apologize ineffectively. Maybe it's also because Ella's defensive and insecure about not being royalty, so she doesn't like that Chloe's a princess. I don't know. So then Chloe and Red leave to give Ella some space, and they go to the Black Lagoon. They see the villain kids going into their lair, which is inside some sort of giant fish carcass that comes up from under the water. And then the villain kids sing a song about getting revenge. Everyone suggests different ways of getting revenge, but Uliana doesn't like any of them. So she calls upon evil spirits to tell her what to do. The evil spirits tell her to cook a recipe from this magic cookbook, which will turn Bridget into a monster. And I guess it's supposed to be clever, because the reason Uliana wants revenge in the first place is because she ate Bridget's cupcakes, which turned her into a flamingo. So the revenge is a parallel, a baked good that causes a magical transformation. It's a little like Carrie, right? Embarrassing someone by making them look ugly at a school dance. I've never seen Carrie. I haven't seen most movies, but I have seen every Descendants movie many times. So then Red and Chloe go to Bridget to ask her about the magic cookbook. Bridget is in her pajamas and is practicing her dance for Castle Coming, and her hair looks horrible. I haven't brought up the wigs because, it's a Descendants movie. The wigs are bad. They're always bad. Wigs are expensive. These movies have a TV budget. People love to point out that Chloe's wigs are super inconsistent, which they are. Different lengths, different curls, different volume, different color, just completely different wigs. And I really don't understand how that happened. After each day of shooting, did they just throw the wig away? Why did they make so many different looking wigs? We will never know. But my least favorite wig in this entire movie is Bridget's wig in this scene. It's such a darker pink than her other wig, and the hairline is so awful. I think it has something to do with it being in a ponytail versus before it was loose. It doesn't even really look like hair. At least with all Chloe's wigs, you kind of get what they're going for. Anyway, so Red and Chloe compliment Bridget's fun room, and Red says, "Where I come from, there's a rule against all this." Who's against fun? Our queen, aka my mom. She also hates my style, the way I think, everything about me. And then Bridget says, "Well, if I was your mom, I'd love to have a daughter who thinks for herself." And we're supposed to be like, oh my god, it's ironic because she is Red's mom. But all I could think was, that's such a weird thing to say. This is why you don't have any friends, Bridget. You can't be weird like that. No, weird people can have friends. So I am told. Then they ask Bridget if they've heard of this magic cookbook, and Bridget looks for it on her shelves. Very relatable to not know what books you own. I don't know what else on there. Also, Bridget has the looking glass in her room. So while she's looking at the cookbooks, Red and Chloe check on the future. The looking glass shows Charming in the courtyard asking the Queen of Hearts where Cinderella is. And the Queen of Hearts is looking for these. And she drops the glass slippers on the ground. And Charming is like, what have you done? So back in the present day, Cinderella's dead. Pretty bold thing for this movie to do. And then Bridget is like, oh, I don't have it. It must be one of the banned ones. Which apparently the banned cookbooks are locked up in Merlin's office and have magical booby traps on them. So then Red and Chloe have a disagreement. Chloe wants to tell Principal Merlin what's going on and ask him for help. Red thinks they should break into his office and steal the cookbook. The conversation quickly escalates. They accuse each other of acting like their mothers. Red says Chloe sounds like Cinderella, and how did being a goody-goody work out for her? Which, the Queen of Hearts murdered her. Which is not an indictment of Cinderella being a goody-goody, it's an indictment of the Queen of Hearts. And Chloe says that Red is evil, just like her mom. The next day, Chloe goes to ask Ella for advice. What if your friend is pushing you to do something bad, but says it's for a good reason? And then they sing a song about nuance and morality not being black and white. There's a line in the song where Ella's like, if it's to save a life. And then Chloe is like, to save your life. So, now Chloe's on board with Red's plan. Not to be lame, but telling Merlin is definitely the better plan, right? Like, you should tell him, hey, there's some crazy bullying going on, and there's going to be a prank at the dance using this cookbook. So, 1, make sure to really lock that cookbook down, and 2, be on the lookout for bullying in general. Because stealing the cookbook is kind of a short-term plan. Red and Chloe are going to time travel back to the present day. And what's going to happen then? I'm going to bring up Harry Potter now. I apologize. J.K. Rowling sucks. But you know in the Chamber of Secrets, the kids want to go to Dumbledore for help, but Dumbledore has been forced out of the school, so then the kids have to take care of things themselves. I feel like we could have done something like that. Like, the girls want to go to Merlin for help, but they go to his office and he's not there. Maybe he's left a note on his door, like, I've been called away on important wizard business. I'll be back in a few days. And the girls are like, but the dance is tomorrow. That'll be too late. And that's when they decide to take care of the cookbook on their own. I would like a token effort to tell an adult. You know, to communicate to the children watching. Tell a trusted grown-up about bullying or time travel shenanigans or what have you. And in that same vein, it's funny that the message this movie is going for is that sometimes breaking and entering and stealing is good. And Chloe was kind of being a narc loser who had to learn about nuance and be peer pressured. But whatever, that's what we're doing. Then the girls go in the office to get the book. The booby traps include swords and a suit of armor that come to life. And stone owls go to tell Merlin and try to take the book. The girls do parkour and sword fight, and at one point Chloe takes off her shoes to throw at the owl. I think it's meant to be a growth moment, like she's willing to sacrifice these shoes that are important to her. And they get the book, but then the villain kids come in. They left Morgie outside to be the lookout, and the rest of them came in to take the book. But when they go to open it, the booby trap on it freezes them in place, because it's enchanted against falling into the wrong hands. Please note that if the book is booby-trapped, then even if Red and Chloe weren't here, the villains still would have ended up frozen. The girls take the book back, and Chloe encourages Red to open it. And Red opens it and isn't frozen, proving that she isn't evil, I guess. The character arcs in this movie are underwhelming. We have whatever confusing thing is going on with Chloe, and then we have Red, who is very vocally against her mom and being evil, but sentences Cinderella to death. And then Red has to prove to herself that she isn't evil by opening a magic book. Then Merlin comes in, because he was notified by his owl, and the villains are given detention. Then the girls go back to their dorm and they're like, the villain kids have detention? We have the cookbook? We can go back now. We're not going to tell Merlin. We're not going to check the future in the looking glass. We're not saying bye to anyone. And we're leaving the cookbook in our dorm room, which is the safest possible place for it. So they go back to the present. They're back at the Welcome Day ceremony, and this time, instead of conjuring an army, the Queen of Hearts summons Bubbles, and her dress is white to show that she is no longer evil. Everyone dances to a remix of the song that Bridget sang earlier, but Uma has an ominous voiceover line about messing with the fabric of time. You didn't think that was the end of the story, did you? The end. So when this movie first came out, I had people messaging and tagging me like, the ending of the new Descendants is really weird. And I was like, I don't know what that could possibly mean. And then I watched it, and I was like, oh. So the climax of this movie is stealing a book, and then they immediately go back home, and the movie ends. It's both abrupt and underwhelming. First and most obvious question, why didn't we see Castle Coming? It's the event the whole plot was revolving around. It's where Bridget turns evil and Ella falls in love with Charming. And Descendants movies always end with some big formal event where everyone gets to wear gaudy dresses and there's an end of movie musical number. This is a new movie, so I guess it's fine if we break tradition, but I'm sure a lot of viewers were expecting that. And since they're talking about Castle Coming constantly, it feels like that's what the movie is building towards. In an interview with producer Suzanne Todd, she says, "There was never a scene at the dance. We never planned to get there. A dance is always fun, but no, we never planned that." Which is baffling. Here's what I'm assuming. There's going to be another movie, and Castle Coming is going to be in that movie. Red and Chloe messed something up in the past, which is why we had those lines that it's dangerous messing with the fabric of time. They're going to have to go back and fix it, and while they're back there, they're going to go to Castle Coming. We'll talk about this later, but producer Suzanne Todd also said that this movie had too much stuff in it, so I think it's possible that in the script writing process, it was decided that they couldn't fit Castle Coming in this movie, and so they'll just save it for the next one. And instead, this movie would spend time introducing the characters in the world. But now they've made a movie that ends too fast and feels like it's missing something. I don't necessarily think Castle Coming is what the end of this movie needed. It needed a big climactic scene that's not easily stealing a book, and maybe a longer resolution. So you could save Castle Coming for next time, but something else exciting needs to happen. Here's my pitch to punch up the scene a little bit. I think it would have been more fun if while Red and Chloe are trying to get the book, Uliana comes in and they have a fight scene. Instead of just fighting disembodied swords, have the villain of the movie in the final confrontation. I think just Uliana, because if it's all the villain kids, then that's too unbalanced. Maybe she comes in first and the door is magically booby-trapped and it locks behind her, so all the other villain kids are locked outside the office. Then we can cut to silly reaction shots of them. Uliana is using her tentacles and she grabs one of the booby-trap swords that's flying around. Then her and Chloe sword fight. Meanwhile, Red is able to get the book and she yells, "Let's get out of here!" She's taken out the pocket watch so they can escape to the present. I'm imagining a dramatic shot where Red and Chloe reach out to each other. But then Uliana uses her tentacles to grab the pocket watch right out of Red's hand. And she's like, "Curious. I wonder what this does." The door to the office unlocks and the other villains crowd around her. Uliana goes to activate it, and Chloe yells, "Wait, we'll trade you the book for the watch." And Red's like, "What the hell are you doing?" Uliana agrees, and she holds out the watch, and Chloe holds out the book. But Uliana's bluffing, and she takes the book without giving the watch back. Then she opens the book, and the villains are frozen. Chloe's all smug, like, "Bridget said the book was enchanted against falling into the wrong hands. I figured it would do something to stop her." Then they take the pocket watch and run and hide. Merlin comes in and gives the villains detention and whatnot. Just a little more high stakes. Watching the movie, I really thought something was going to happen to the pocket watch. Like, we have this very important object. I thought it would be a plot point where it gets lost or broken or stolen and we have to get it back somehow. You know, a classic, "How are we going to get home?" But no, we have it the whole time and it works reliably. Another weird thing about this movie is there isn't really a final twist. The first Descendants has two twists. Ben revealing he isn't under the love potion, and Jane stealing the wand. The second Descendants has Uma escaping the barrier and love spelling Ben. And the third movie doesn't really have anything like that, but I think the third movie has the weakest plot, so. In Rise of Red, the villain kids are introduced. Immediately we can tell that they did the prank, and they did. No surprises there. Maybe it's supposed to be a twist that they show up to take the book and get frozen. I don't think that's really a reveal or a surprise, though. They're just defeated. I think people were expecting some kind of twist. And the most obvious thing would be something about who did the prank. It's set up that it's the villain kids. It's super obvious that it's them. So what if it was revealed that it was someone else? I saw a lot of people theorizing that Ella did the prank. Either on purpose or on accident, Ella ends up doing the prank on Bridget, and that's why the Queen of Hearts hates Cinderella so much. She's the only other character we've spent a lot of time with, and then it would reveal a new reason that the Queen of Hearts hates her so much. She wasn't just a bystander, it was kind of her fault. I don't think it would be on purpose. I don't think Disney would make beloved Princess Cinderella purposefully humiliate her friend. Ella's actress has said that she thinks it's silly that people think Ella is secretly the villain. But I could see it maybe being on accident. Like, maybe Uliana rips the recipe out of the cookbook and plants it in Ella's room. And Ella wants to bake something to cheer Bridget up, and she uses the recipe without knowing what it is. Or maybe Uliana makes the recipe and then plants it so it looks like normal refreshments for the dance, and Ella is tricked into giving one to Bridget. Or Ella is tricked or manipulated into opening the book for Uliana. Because since it's booby-trapped against bad people, Uliana couldn't open it on her own. Maybe it has something to do with Prince Charming and Ella going to the dance. Since Ursula made a deal with Ariel so she could see Prince Eric, maybe Uliana does something similar with Ella. Like, in exchange for Ella helping with the prank, Uliana promises to get her Prince Charming. Descendants loves doing a plot point that's a reference to the animated movies. But I don't know if Ella doing the prank is going to be the twist. I mean, obviously it's not the twist in this movie, but then I don't know if it's going to happen in the next movie either. I understand it as a theory, because what else do we have to theorize about other than the prank? Speaking of, we did get stills from a deleted scene posted by Morgie's actor. They show Morgie sleeping in what looks like the villain's lair, and him in the school holding the cookbook. I'm assuming this would have been like an after-credit scene. Like, you thought everything was fixed, but Morgie has the cookbook now. So maybe he's the one who did the prank all along. The villain kids got the cookbook, then got frozen by the booby trap and given detention, but Morgie wasn't there. He was outside being the lookout. So he was able to go back and get the cookbook that Chloe and Red left, presumably in their dorm room. I don't know why this was cut. Maybe they changed their mind about how Morgie was involved, or maybe they wanted to save the scene for the next movie. Who knows? The other Cinderella theory is that since Chloe broke the vase, Ella ended up grounded, which she wouldn't have been in the original timeline. If she was grounded, then maybe she didn't end up going to Castle Coming and never fell in love with Prince Charming. So maybe that's what they have to go back and fix. Now let's talk a little bit more about deleted and changed stuff. First is the original premise of the movie. When Rise of Red was announced, it was originally called The Pocket Watch. 7 new songs and Disney classic songs will advance the story, which introduces Red, the whip-smart and rebellious teenage daughter of the Queen of Hearts, and Chloe, the perfectionist and athletic daughter of Cinderella and Prince Charming. In order to prevent an impending coup in Auradon, one that looms during the celebration of a new royal baby, Red must join forces with Chloe to travel back in time via the White Rabbit's pocket watch to stop an event that would lead to grave consequences. So what I heard in that was royal baby. Presumably this would have been Ben and Mal's baby, which I think by the time they had announced this movie, the vibe was already that Dove Cameron was not interested in coming back. So I'm guessing that's why they changed it. They thought they'd get her to come back, and they didn't. I'm assuming the announcement of a new royal baby would be at the castle and not at the school, which would make a coup make more sense, just like location-wise. Then we have to talk about cut characters. It seems like there was a teen Beast who was cut. There's very little information about him, and we never got a casting announcement for him. Like, I think we know who the actor would have been, but they didn't do like a press release for it. And then there's Zellie. Depending on what source you look at, she is either Rapunzel's daughter or a teenage Rapunzel. The Deadline casting announcement for all of the minor characters says, Sam Morellos plays Zellie, the teen daughter of Rapunzel with a hipster vibe and fast-growing hair. This announcement was on February 15th, 2023, and included Hades, Maleficent, Morgie, Fairy Godmother, Jasmine, Aladdin, and Charming. So all characters who have lines and at least some screen time. It's not like this was announcing background actors. The official Disney Plus Twitter account posted that same day, Sam Morellos is teen Rapunzel, aka Zellie. But then the official Descendants Twitter posted that same day, she's left her tower and enrolled at Merlin Academy. Rapunzel's teen daughter, aka Zellie, is played by Sam Morellos. So, very inconsistent messaging as to who this character is. In an interview, producer Suzanne Todd explained that her role was cut. You're probably also wondering why Zellie appears only briefly during a group scene in the courtyard of Merlin Academy. According to Todd, the answer is simple. We just literally ran out of real estate. We had an incredible actress cast, and we had plans for her, but the movie is packed full. It's stuffed to the gills with so many characters, so much plot, so much singing and dancing. We had originally planned for some characters to have a bigger part and just ran out of room. We had so much plot, did you? So we had a character, and then we cut that character. And she was there on set and in a lot of behind-the-scenes photos, so I think they filmed stuff with her and then took it out during the editing process. But the plot thickens. There was a rumor going around that Zellie and Chloe were gonna have a gay thing. I believe this started because a Descendants fan account leaked the original casting information for Chloe. It reads, in part, "Along the way, Chloe develops feelings for the delightful Zellie, daughter of Rapunzel, as well as discovers her courage and willingness to grow." And when I heard this rumor, I was like, that's bullshit. I don't believe that's real. I don't believe Disney would approve a lesbian relationship with a lead character in one of their current biggest children's franchises. I just don't believe it. So I had completely disregarded that rumor. But then one of the storyboard artists for the movie posted some YouTube videos showing storyboards for different songs, including Life is Sweeter, which is the song that Bridget sings with the cupcakes with all the guest verses. Apparently the storyboard artists had demo versions of the song to work with. And this early version of the song included a verse from Teenage Tiana and a verse from Zellie. The Tiana verse doesn't really matter to me because they never cast anybody. It doesn't seem like she made it past this initial concept stage. But the Zellie verse is interesting to me. She sings, "I'm just like my hair, don't fit it anywhere, and I can't say I mind it." And then Chloe goes, I think your hair's really great." And Red goes, "Smooth." And I was like, hold on, that was flirting. That gay rumor might have been real. And then later, Ella's actress sang Zellie's cut verse on a live stream, and Sam Morello's vocals for the verse also leaked. And in those two versions, the lyrics have been changed to, "I've never been like one of the crowd, but music never lets me down." And then in the leaked vocals, Chloe goes, "Nice loot?" And Red goes, "Smooth." So that's all crazy. And if it's true, sad that we almost got lesbians and Disney cut it. Can you imagine how annoying I'd be if we had Descendants lesbians? Maybe that's why they cut it, actually. They were like, YouTuber Sarah Seraph will never shut up if we make canonical lesbians. I will say it's interesting to me that as it exists now, The Rise of Red doesn't have any romance. I mean, there's Ella and Charming, kind of, but Red and Chloe don't have love interests as of right now. Which is interesting because the Ben and Mal relationship was such a big part of Descendants. Director Jennifer Fang has mentioned female empowerment with Descendants, and I've always said that Descendants is kind of a girl franchise. The main characters and the villains are all girls, and I think that's extra true with Rise of Red. This movie barely has boys in it. We have Charming and some of the villain kid crew, but that's kind of it, and they are very much not main characters. The last thing, and this is the most unsubstantiated, is that allegedly in a Descendants fan Discord, the actress for adult Jasmine said that there were 28 minutes of cut content. Adult Jasmine was in the courtyard during the coup. If we're taking this at face value that it's true, which I think it could be true, that's a lot to cut out. I don't think it would have been plot point stuff. Like, I don't think there's an alternate ending on the cutting room floor. I'm assuming this would have been more interactions with the side characters and subplot character building stuff. Like the Zellie stuff. Overall, it seems like the production of this movie had some hiccups. It's not all smooth sailing. Then, moving on from the movie, there is a prequel novel. So, if you don't know, they did 4 novels for the original movies. These novels were new Descendant stories written by author Melissa de la Cruz, and they took place in between the movies. So, book 1 was a prequel to the first movie, books 2 and 3 took place in between the first and second movies, and book 4 took place in between the second and third movies. I recently did a video on these books and other Descendants media, if you're interested. And my main takeaway is that these books are fun, but they don't matter. Like, they're official Descendants media, they are technically canon, But the movies do not adhere to anything that's original to the books. The books have their own world building and original characters and plot lines, and the movies never use any of that material. These books are very much Melissa de la Cruz's creative vision. The books are canon in the way that, like, the Star Wars Expanded Universe novels are canon. They're official, but don't really have significance to the franchise as a whole. Obviously, I haven't read any Star Wars EU novels, haven't even watched Star Wars. This video is just take a shot every time Sarah hasn't watched a movie. Disney doesn't view these books as important, so the stuff that happens in them I think is interesting, but I don't want to give you the impression that anything in this book is going to matter to the movies. So this book is called Beyond the Isle of the Lost, and it is a prequel to The Rise of Red. Let me go get it. Hold on. Unprepared. Beyond the Isle of the Lost. We match. The book starts with the citizens of Wonderland attending an un-party. This is a party meant to celebrate everyone's un-birthdays, because the Queen of Hearts has made birthdays illegal. The party is not supposed to be fun, so everyone is standing around and not allowed to eat the food or play games. Red is there as a guest of honor, and she's very bored. Then the Queen of Hearts shows up. She announces a new decree that laughter is not allowed before noon, and jokes should only be told every other Sunday. Then she sees that on the dessert table there's flamingo cupcakes. Red turned to the royal baker, who was quivering in their boots. "Ma'am, your majesty, I'm so sorry. I found an old recipe of yours. Get it out of my sight," the queen hissed. Then a boy tries to steal strawberry tarts while everyone is distracted, but he is caught and taken away by the card soldiers. Then the Queen of Hearts brings up the annual Wonderland Tea Ceremony, which is meant to commemorate Wonderland's victory in the War of Roses against Auradon. And the Queen says that this year, Red will be making her first royal decree at the tea ceremony. We also learn that Red doesn't have any friends. It was better to be alone and focus on yourself than be with people who secretly didn't like you. That's what Red's mother said, at least. The Queen of Hearts discouraged friendships. The Queen of Hearts often said that if you cared about something too much, it would get taken away. Red had learned this the hard way with a few stuffed animals and later hobbies over the years. She would never recover her sewing machine from the bottom of the moat, where the Queen had thrown it after outlawing anyone but the kingdom's authorized tailors from making their own clothes. Red likes going to school because it's a break from her mother. Now, in this book, she goes to school, but in the movie it was made clear that she was homeschooled. In the alchemy class, Bridget asks how many kids were at her old school, and Red says 1, and Bridget says she used to be homeschooled too. It's just interesting because usually the books don't contradict the movies. Red's favorite class is science because it follows logic, unlike her mother. If Queen of Hearts stubbed her toe, she might outlaw raincoats. If a servant spilled her soup, the Queen could demand that nobody said the word Tuesday ever again. But if Red held a tart in midair and dropped it, it would fall to the ground no matter what. Her science teacher is Maddox Hatter, the Mad Hatter's son. In the movie, he was her tutor, but here he is a science teacher. Her science class has a new student named Chester. He isn't well behaved like the other students and is cat-like with a wide grin. He's, I guess, a human relative of the Cheshire Cat. The books take more liberties with including the non-human Disney characters, but this is new. I think because a lot of the Wonderland characters are animals, and since we are limited to only Wonderland characters for this book, we're doing human characters related to these animal characters. Chester and Red are assigned as lab partners, and they're supposed to do homework together after school. They're meant to write about the relationship between magic and science. So they do a magic experiment that causes them to grow bigger and smaller, but they're able to control the results like science. Red goes home, and her mother tells her that they're going to start royal training. That night, Chester throws a shoe at her window and encourages her to sneak out. Red sneaks out a lot, but never with other people. She makes it down from her window, and Chester introduces her to his friend Ace, and Red seems to have kind of a crush on him. They all talk about how the rest of the Wonderland kids are mindless rule followers, but they might be able to encourage everyone to be rebellious by throwing a party like the ones in Auradon. The first Isle of the Lost book also had a plot point about throwing a party. Then the next day, the Queen tells Red that she will be pulled from some of her classes for more royal training. 2 women of the court will be helping her coaching. Twee, daughter of Tweedledee, and Dora, daughter of the Dormouse. They are critical of Red's table manners and say that she will be under a lot of scrutiny. She needs to be perfect to be respected as a ruler. The next day, Red skips royal training to party plan with Chester and Ace. They find a clearing in the woods where they can throw their party, and they decide to have the party in 2 days, a quick turnaround so that they won't be found out. They make a bunch of invitations, and the next day sneak them into kids' bags and leave them lying around. The Duchess, who is the headmistress of the school, almost picks one up off the floor, but then Red approaches her and yells at her for not RSVPing to the tea ceremony. Using that as a distraction, Chester and Ace are able to hide the invitation. That afternoon, the Queen comes to Red's royal training. Red is served an oyster which she doesn't like, and she is encouraged to yell at the butler who served it to her. They're just serving what's on the menu, right? They don't know I hate oysters. They should. The Queen leaned over the table, watching Red intently. It's their job to know. You're the one in power. They should know you inside and out, cater to your every need, anticipate your every whim. The fact that they gave you something you dislike is a direct insult to you and your authority. So Red yells and throws a plate, and the Queen is pleased, but Red feels guilty. The next day is the party day. Red sneaks out. Chester and Ace have had trouble setting things up, so the party looks kind of lame, but kids start showing up. And at first they don't trust that Red is there, but they're able to get over it, and the kids start hanging out. Then the soldier card army comes and breaks up the party. Red, Ace, and Chester are brought to the castle. Ace and Chester are sent home, and Red is brought to her mother. Her mother says that having friends is weak, but doesn't care at all that Red has been trying to throw a party. She's too concerned about the upcoming tea ceremony. Red goes to bed upset that her mother didn't care enough to be angry. The next day, Red wants to go further away from the capital of Wonderland, where rumor has it they don't follow the Queen's laws. She wants inspiration on how to be rebellious after their party was so lame. She talks to Chester and Ace, and they explain that Bramble Bay is the seaside at the edge of Wonderland. The Queen never visits there, so things are more lax. The friend group makes a plan to go visit. It involves going through the confusing Tulgey Wood and using a car that has clearance to travel through Wonderland. Chester's cousin, who's a mechanic, has secured a car with high enough clearance for them to borrow, and it's the Duchess's car. Red steals some of the Duchess's stationery to forge a note from the Duchess to the Queen. The note apologizes that she hasn't RSVP'd and offers to do some special royal training with Red. The Queen agrees, so Red is able to sneak away. Red, Chester, and Ace are able to navigate through Tulgey Wood and make it to Bramble Bay. Their cover story is that they are visiting family, since Chester's aunt actually lives here, and they experience a lot of culture shock. They eat at a cafe called the Bread and Butterfly, they drink root beer, and hear live music that isn't the national anthem. A girl at the cafe thinks that the group might be spies, but then the group gets into a minor car accident, and they knock over the wagon of an oyster salesman. They help him pick up his oysters, and then the girl from the cafe trusts them because that was a nice thing to do. It turns out her name is Dee, and she is Twee's sister. Dee ran away from the capital, but couldn't convince her sister to join her. She invites them to a party and directs them to a mechanic who can fix the scratch on the car left from the oyster wagon. They go to a party, which has a very secretive speakeasy vibe, and this party has dancing. Dee gives Red some cassette tapes that have music on them. Red thanks Dee for her help, and Dee says that Red should try and use her authority for good. Then someone rings a bell, which is an alarm that the guards are coming. Red, Chester, and Ace are able to drive out of Bramble Bay and make it back home. Also, Chester wrote a letter to his aunt and left it for the innkeeper to deliver. When Red gets back, her mother doesn't seem to have noticed or cared where she was. The Queen plans to go out of town for 2 days to personally oversee the creation of new tea sets for the ceremony. So Red decides that they should throw a party in the castle while the Queen is gone. This time, Chester gets his other friends to help, and they get a boombox and food. Red makes decorations, and they send out new invitations. Everyone shows up, and Red and her friends get the party going by dancing. They dance to a recording of King Ben singing Be Our Guest with the Oradon Glee Club from the first movie, which would be very low on my list of Descendants music to party to. But then the Queen shows up, and this time she's furious. Everyone scatters. Red, Chester, and Ace sneak out through an abandoned servants' tunnel under the castle. They camp out in the woods, trying to travel farther away from the capital. But then the card army comes for them. Ace suggests splitting up. That was a real tongue twister. So Ace and Chester go off in one way, and Red goes off in another. Red tries to get away, but then she sees Ace and Chester get captured. Ace has a gash on his cheek from a soldier's arrow and yells at the guards that Red is long gone. Then Ace and Chester are taken away. Red wants to help her friends, so she decides to go back to the capital instead of running away. She makes it back to the castle and sees a general card soldier who has a full face helmet and only a ceremonial weapon. She tackles him to take his armor as a disguise. The helmet is locked in place, so she uses a bobby pin to unlock it. Then it's revealed that the soldier in the helmet is the boy from the unparty who tried to steal a tart. His punishment was being made into a soldier card, and he doesn't remember what's happened to him, which is dark. Red tells him to run. She makes it to the dungeons and tries to sneak Chester and Ace out, but then they run into the Queen. It was all a trap to see if Red would try and rescue them. The Queen is disappointed that Red has friends and calls her weak. Then she sends the three of them into the dungeons. The three of them wonder if they'll be executed, but Red says that she won't let that happen. The next morning, they are taken upstairs, and Red is separated from her friends. Her clothes are changed, and she is brought outside where her mother is waiting at the table drinking tea. It's time for the tea ceremony. Ace and Chester are wheeled out, and they're all chained up. The Queen gives a speech about the importance of power. And so, on this commemorative day, a demonstration of power would be fitting. Power over weakness, power over any little nuisances that might distract my daughter from her full potential as the next ruler of Wonderland. And I know you do love my unparty tricks. And then the Queen turns Ace into a card soldier. Red calls out to him, but he doesn't recognize her, and he joins the other soldiers, indistinguishable from them. Then Red sees that Chester has been turned into a cat. He smiles at her and then disappears. The Queen wrote a new decree, which she has Red read, and Red vows to never be vulnerable again. The end. This book feels very dystopian YA novel, and I feel like it's the darkest of the Isle of the Lost books, because it ends on such a downer. Like, are Ace and Chester gonna be okay? We may never know. But I liked it. I thought the Wonderland world building was really cool. And then I didn't know this when I pre-ordered my book, but there is a Barnes & Noble exclusive edition with an extra chapter. And I wasn't about to buy another copy of this book, but I was willing to go stand in the children's section of Barnes & Noble and read the chapter there. Appreciate what I do for you. In this chapter, Mal and Ben are going on an official tour of Auradon, and they're visiting Camelot. Evie, Jay, and Doug are already there. Evie is, I think, looking for fashion inspiration. She wants to make a collection inspired by medieval tapestries. And then everyone goes to a meeting with King Arthur. Queen Ella, King Charming, and Chloe are also there. Chloe is going to Auradon Prep next year, so we talk about that. Merlin's owl, Archimedes, talks about all the trouble there was back when the school was Merlin Academy. My dear Archimedes, Ella nodded at the owl, don't you go telling tall tales about me in front of my daughter. Are they tall tales if they're true? Charming winked at his wife. Like what, for example? Chloe asked, raising her eyebrows. Something about unauthorized use of magic, trespassing in the dungeons, an epic battle, Archimedes guffawed, then cleared his throat when he saw Ella fixing him with a regal glare. But I couldn't really say. My memory isn't what it used to be, alas. Is that all a reference to something that I'm missing? Archimedes also mentions cursed vines, stolen books, dragons, a mysterious disappearance, which I don't know what that's about either. I don't think it's a Sword in the Stone reference, right? If you have any ideas, help me out. Chloe says that Chad hasn't told her anything about the school. And we get a moment where Jay is like, ugh, Chad, I bet he didn't. Then we talk about activities at Auradon Prep. Chloe says she's into history, and Mal's like, oh, they have a great library. Auradon Prep is a great place to figure yourself out. And Chloe says it might be more peaceful now that there aren't villain kids. And Mal says, there might not be any villain kids at Auradon Prep these days, Mal said slowly, but there is still Wonderland. The end. This chapter's fine, very short, But my favorite part of this Barnes & Noble experience is while I was reading, there were these two little girls on a play date with their moms. And I overheard them. The mom was like, "What book are you looking for?" And the girl was like, "Beyond the Aisle." And I was reading my bonus chapter, like, and they went over to the, like, side wall of books, which I had already looked there. The book wasn't there. It was on its own little freestanding table that was all of the Descendants books. So then I call over to them. I'm like, "Beyond the Isle of the Lost?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "It's at this table." And then I got to hear these two little girls so excited looking at these Descendants books and explaining them to their moms. And the table had a little thing on it that said must reads. And one of the girls was like, "All of the Descendants books are must reads." So that was a very cute coincidence. Like, real life evidence of kids liking Descendants. I don't know any children, so it was very cool to see children out in the wild who are very into Descendants. Like, this is why they published these novels. Now, since it's me, we have to talk about the dolls. I have all of my Descendants dolls here behind me, a bunch of original Descendants dolls, and a bunch of Rise of Red dolls. The original dolls were made by Hasbro, and the faces are very stylized. They're made to look like the character models in the Wicked World animated series. But now, Disney has started working with Mattel again. So the Rise of Red dolls are made by Mattel, and their faces are much more realistic. You can see the difference when you look at an old Uma versus a Rise of Red Uma. Very different approaches to the same character. I like the Rise of Red dolls a lot. I went in with fairly low expectations, and when they were released, I was very happy. There's a doll for each of the main characters. I have Red, Chloe, Bridget, Cinderella, Uma, and Uliana. The Ella doll is really hard to find, so I don't have her, and I don't really want the Queen of Hearts doll. She's a good doll, good dress, really looks like Rita Ora. I'm just not interested. There's also reveal unboxing dolls of Chloe and Red that are meant to be like the cookbook and you mix a potion. There's a lot of kids' toys that are these unboxing potion making things. No thank you. Not for me. I've customized my Red doll and my Chloe doll a little bit. I didn't like Chloe's mouth, so I repainted it and I also trimmed her hair. For Red, I gave her a little red eyeshadow and a little bit of teeth. I really don't like Red's eyes. They're very big and round, which is not what Kylie Cantrell looks like and also not the vibe of the character. But I didn't have the guts to repaint them. I also don't want my doll to look too different from how she's supposed to look. So even if I was to do that, I would want to have a backup doll. But overall, I'm very happy with the dolls. Which, like, thank God. Can you imagine if there were new Descendants dolls and I didn't like them? That would have been such a bummer. So I think that's everything. You didn't know it was possible to talk about Rise of Red this much, did you? So going back to the question of, is it good? Sort of. It's bad in the same way that every Descendants movie is kind of bad, but also has uniquely bad pacing and character motivations. But it's a Descendants movie. So I still think it was really fun. I loved the setting of Merlin Academy and how magical everything was. The original Descendants movies had a little bit more of a normal high school aesthetic. I liked some of the songs. And I love this cast. I think it's so fun having this very Gen Z cast who's younger than me, making TikToks and having fun together in interviews.
We're gonna put these guys in normal people clothes in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome to Chili.
Why would you give me that quote?
My one thing was I went into the Disney Channel building and I sat down with the president of Disney Channel and I said, I want to make history. And that's what this is.
Every time I see you, I feel like you have different hair and
I know people were sad and maybe apprehensive that this movie doesn't have the same cast as the original. But I was like, when I watched Descendants for the first time, like 2 years ago, I didn't know any of the cast, and I grew to love them. And that will probably happen again with Rise of Red. And it did! I hope they have big, good plans for the next movie. It hasn't been officially announced. People thought it would be announced at D23, which is Disney's convention where they announce new projects. Instead, they announced a Descendants and Zombies tour. Not what I wanted, but another Descendants is coming. It would be crazy if it wasn't. So I'm waiting with bated breath. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe. I'm Sarah Seraph on all social media, even if I don't post that much. And I don't know how to end a YouTube video. So, bye!